Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make the journal for our mixed media morsels motivations for 2020, and we're going to be using a checkbook register. If you purchased a little kit from me, you'll have these items in your kit, and we're going to be making this journal pretty much like I made the journal I showed in the intro, although this one I left as one signature of pages in the book, and the one I'm going to do today, I'm going to make two signatures where I'm just going to separate the pages in the checkbook register. There are 8 folded sheets, and so we'll have 2 signatures. Each one will have 4 sheets, and they will be folded. So let's get started. I'm going to move this stuff out of the way for just a minute. What I did was I just drew out some little images showing what the measurements are for the cardstock. This specifically is for the cardstock that we're going to use, white cardstock. And we're going to cut cardstock and then cover it with these fabrics. The inside the spine here, there's an extra piece of cardboard. It's actually a very thin piece of chipboard. You can also use product packaging like a cereal box, or a box from a granola bars, or something like that. And that piece just helps to stabilize the spine and reinforce it and makes it nice and sturdy to sew the signatures in. So that's why this is a different color, because it's going to be cut from a different type of material. So the cardstock for the outside of the journal cover is 6 1/4 inches high by 7 1/4 wide. Okay, we're going to mark some score lines right here. We're coming in at 3/4 of an inch and scoring, and then we're going to come in at 4 inches and score, and that leaves us a 5/8, well actually it's about 3/4, I believe. Let's see, yeah, that leaves us a 3/4 inch spine. Okay, so all I did was I found the center of the sheet, and these centering rulers, guys, especially this Tim Holtz one I really love because it has the grid on it and it's really helpful. But I just used a centering ruler to find the center, and then I marked the center all the way down just so I would know where center was. It's not imperative that you do that, as long as you have these measurements to come in 3 1/4 inch and then come in again and score on a 4-inch line, then you're fine. So I have my pieces already cut. Okay, here's my outside cover. These 2 pieces are for the inside cover. That would be this measurement, 3 inches wide by 6 inches high, and these go on the inside of the cover, and they'll be covered in fabric. These pieces of cardstock are going to be covered. We're going to glue the fabric onto the cardstock. So these are going to go in here, and then my little reinforcement piece, I cut this off of a sturdy greeting card, and that's going to go right in the middle inside those score lines, which I still have to make. Now this reinforcement piece is only 5/8 of an inch. It's not 3/4 inches. You can see that there's a little gap on either side when this is in place, and that gives us room to fold those sides up and not push against this piece. Okay, so let me get my score lines in place. So first of all, I'm just gonna use my little pattern I made here and mark it rather than measure it all again. I'm just gonna use this and mark where I made my measurements already. So I'm gonna score here. Let me just mark it at the bottom again too. Now, if you have a scoreboard, that's perfect. And if you don't, you can take a ruler and something like an embossing tool like this, or the end of a bone folder. You can take anything like that and just press into the cardstock. I'm going to show you what I mean here. Put something that's got a little bit of give underneath, you'll do a lot better. So I'm just going to lay the ruler where I made the lines, and I'll just use the bone folder and just take it down. Let's see that. Yeah, I can see that line. It's hard to see, but it's there. But if you're using a scoreboard, you just can come in at those measurements and score your lines. Also, sometimes your paper trimmer, you can use that little line where the cutting blade goes. You can use that as a scoring line there. Okay. It's just easier to fold, and if you have the score in place, it's much easier to fold. Okay. Let's see if we got that in there good enough. Yeah, I can see that. Okay. Marks that you make on this cardstock, just keep them minimal, but they really won't show because they're all going to be covered with the fabric, so it's okay. You can see the little score lines there, I think. Let's see if I turn it this way. Yeah, you can see them there. They're a little deeper with a scoring tool, but this is fine. This will work fine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fold on those lines. Okay, on both of those. Okay, one. And then we'll fold on this one. If I can hold on to it. Here we go. Okay. I'm just trying to make sure that I keep it straight because they didn't score too deeply. I could have had something probably a little bit softer underneath that, and it would have made those score lines a little bit easier to work with. There we go. But you can see it worked fine. So this is all ready to be covered, and now we need to cut the fabric. You can decide which side of the fabric you like the best. One side is typically just a little bit more vibrant than the other, but sometimes it's hard to tell. So it just depends on how much dye was used when it was created. So decide which side you like the best and put that against your table. So you want to have the wrong side facing up. I cut some pieces of regular printer paper to use as like a pattern for cutting my fabrics with, and it's probably a good idea to do this. I'm just going to lay it on my fabric here and cut around this sheet. Okay, that's all you need to do. If the edges are a little ragged, it's no big deal. That's the part that's going to be folded over around your cardstock sheet. Okay, so it's perfectly fine. Don't have to be extremely precise. Just cut around this piece. You can leave a little extra if you want, just for grins, but it's not necessary, and it's not important that it's, you know, perfectly straight or anything like that. This is easy sorry, not so, but this is easy covering of a journal. Okay, I'm just trimming off the extras. Can save those and use them for later in projects, or in this project or in other projects. Okay. You can pin the pattern to the fabric if you want to. It's just really not necessary to take the time to do that, in my opinion. Not for something like this. Okay. So now we have our outside cover fabric. So our cardstock cover is gonna go on the fabric like this, and we're gonna glue it down just like that. Okay. So, but we're not going to do that just yet. I want to cut the inside pieces first because there's a piece that goes in there first that I need to get cut out. This fabric has not been ironed, but it's perfectly fine. Once you're gluing it down, you spread it out and it's nice and flat, so time you don't need to spend, you know, doing that. Okay, so you got 2 pieces for the inside covers, okay? Remember, this says cut 2 of the cardstocks, okay? And so you're going to cut 2 pieces of fabric to cover those. So we need 2 cut in this exact size of the pattern we make for the fabric. Okay, so we'll have 2. They can be side by side here, and we're going to trim those out. Okay. On this one, you want to go ahead and cut right next to your pattern piece, because we're going to need to use this piece here, so you want to make sure that you have enough of it. And don't cut all the way across like I did on that first piece. Don't cut all the way across, just go right around it, because you're going to need this side too. All right, so just cut right around the 2 pieces. Like that. Okay, so now we got to cut them apart, so I'm going to move one. And we'll cut right up that side. Okay, now we've got 2 pieces for our inside covers. Okay, now we have two things that go for the spine. We have a spine reinforcement cover, which means we're going to cover, where's my pieces? Here they are. We're going to cover that little piece. So we need a piece of fabric that gives us about 1/4 of an inch that wraps all the way around, okay? So they're both, I believe they're both the same width. No, one is smaller. Okay, so the spine cover is narrower, so we're going to use that. Let me move this. We're going to use the skinnier piece down here to cut our spine cover. And then the spine reinforcement cover is going to be cut from this piece. Now the spine cover goes right here to completely cover the spine. And the reason for that is that we don't want any cardstock showing. So for instance, if we had this folded over, okay, and then we have this folded over, and we have the reinforcement piece put in place, there's going to be bits in here that show the white cardstock, those little edges that I showed you a minute ago. So we don't want that to show, so we're going to cut a piece of the inside fabric to be our spine cover, and we're going to glue it right directly onto the spine, and then we'll glue this bright colored piece down, and we'll fold it over, and then when we put these 2 pieces on, they'll cover up the edges of the spine cover. So you'll see what I mean in just a second. If you're not following it, it's okay. I get confused quite a lot. So I'm trying not to get confused today. Let's see. I'm going to move that over. Okay, so we're going to lay the spine cover at the bottom edge of those 2 pieces that we cut, and we'll lay the spine reinforcement cover on the side. If you want to go ahead and just cut it off, like put one end over here at the edge and just cut this right off, you don't have to really cut these pieces off, and it's probably better if you don't cut it down the side, because the more you have covering that area, the better off you are. So in this case, I'm going to just cut mine off right there. Okay, and then just keep your little pattern with your small pieces so you know which one is which. Okay, this one probably does need to be trimmed down, because we don't need as much fabric, because we're covering that small little piece of cardstock, chipboard or product packaging, and we don't want, when we're wrapping it around, don't want it doubling over. We just want it to come together sort of in the middle there and not have too much bulk, because we have to sew through that little piece. So we want to keep it from being too bulky. Okay, and just trim that up. I need to go ahead and cut that off this time, because it's just going to be in my way. There we go. More extras to play with. Okay, make sure we have this on here properly. Okay. Then I'm going to trim that right up the edge. Not important again if it's super duper straight, it's okay. Okay, so now I'm going to keep this with this, and I'm going to keep this with this so that I know what's what, okay? All right, so what we're going to do next is bring our cardstock back over, and we are going to glue that spine cover, this piece, we're going to glue that right into the center of the book. Just going to glue it right down onto that cardstock. So let me move some of this out of my way so I don't lose it. And I'm just using a glue stick because it's worked for me, and I'm not having any issues with anything, so I'm just using the glue stick right on the fabric. Whoops. Well, I'm trying to use the glue stick on the fabric. Here we go. Okay, just get yourself a nice amount on there. And then a lot of little strings there. There will be strings, just move them out of your way as you need to. Okay, so then all I need to do now is just lay this in place. And you want to try to get it, you know, pretty close to the center there. But the fact that you have extra fabric here now, if you're doing like what I did and not trimming it to the exact size, just makes it, just helps that issue all, you know, completely helps it, because it's going to be, if you don't get it right in the center, it's okay because you've got enough going on either side there. All right. So now we've got that there, and I'm going to fold again on my fold lines. We're going to do that a lot just to be sure that our fabric is not pulling taut, and it's not going to, you know, have a problem later when it's when you try to fold it. But if we fold it while it's wet, while the glue is wet, it'll be fine. So you can see I didn't quite get my fabric in the center, but I have enough here from here to here to go over, you know, and from there to there. So that just covers all that area up. All right, now my fabric kind of stretched out a little as I was pressing it, so I am going to trim off this excess right here. Okay. And I'm going to wipe the glue off of my good scissors right away while it's wet. Okay. So we have our spine cover in place, all right? And so now we can put our fabric on our book. Okay, and these edges are going to come over and cover the top and bottom edges of that spine cover. So what you're going to do is turn over your cardstock piece, and you're going to just apply glue liberally. Don't skimp on the glue here, because you do want enough to make sure that it's going to the fabric is going to stick to it. You don't want it coming up later after the fact. If you look at it where the light shines on it just right, you can see areas that you've missed. So be sure to double check it. Make sure there's enough glue on there. All right, I'm going to turn this around and get the other end. Then you're going to take your cardstock and lay it on top of your fabric, and just make sure you kind of center it so that you get about a ½ inch of fabric on all the sides, at least a ½ inch. Okay, if there's a little bit more here or there, it's not a big deal, but you want to make sure that you get at least that much there to fold over. Still wiping the glue off me. Okay. All right, and then I tend to use my brayer and just press it down really good so that it's really pressed into that glue. Flip it over and do the same thing. Check for any wrinkles. If there's any wrinkles, you can smooth them out while the glue is wet. So now you want to, again, fold again on your fold lines. Okay, while the glue is wet. Okay. So it's starting to look like a book. All right. Now we're going to take your scissors and trim off each corner right next to where the corner of the cardstock is. And don't cut the cardstock, but cut pretty close to the corner. Just angle it off right across. Just cutting basically a little triangle off of the fabric. Okay, then you've got some more little bits to play with. Okay, so the edges are going to come up over the, the fabric is going to come up over the edges of the book. So I'm just going to put a little bit of the glue stick right along the edge of the cardstock. Okay, and try to get it on the edge of the cardstock too, not just above there, but right on the edge. Okay, if it gets on the fabric too, that's fine. That's probably helpful. And then you want to make sure you pull it up, and I tend to kind of roll it up a little bit just to be sure that it goes all the way up over the edge, and that way you won't have any little loose puckery areas, you know, along the edge of your book. Okay, so fold that one up, and then you can turn it around and do the other side the same way. Okay, fold up the edge and kind of roll it up. Do it gently and hold down your cardstock because it will tend to push up like this and it will want to bend your cardstock. So just hold it down with the other hand, but roll it towards the other side just to get it to, all the fabric to roll all the way up there where it belongs. Okay. All right. And once you've got the sides done, you can come back and do top and bottom. Same way. So it makes a nice little corner without having too much fabric bunched up in there, making it thick. This makes it nice and thin, smooth. Okay. All right, so there's one side, and we'll do this side the same way. I'm not really going to worry about all those threads because they're going to be covered anyway with the other cardstock, so it'll be fine. Now, once you get this done, fold it again. Just want to make sure we keep that fold in place. Okay. Now look at your corners. Okay, and if they look a little bit, I don't know how, a little bit raggedy or not quite closed, I just typically run the glue stick on the corner just a little bit and kind of just push that under, kind of pinch the corner and then just roll it under. So it ends up being a little bit neater, and it doesn't, it will be glued better and it won't fray on you or anything. So that looks a little bit better. Just gonna do these two. Okay, see how much nicer that looks? It's nicer and rounded, and it's not sticking up like it wanting to fray like this one is. Kind of hard to see it, I know, but you'll see it when you're making yours. This is really an easy process. It sounds difficult, but it's really not, and the fact that I already did a lot of your math for you is it's going to make it a lot easier in that regard. So I hope you enjoy doing this. I really have had a good time making these little journals. Okay, now we're going to let that one dry. Keep it folded like that, and sometimes I'll even just leave it folded and then I'll just stand it up like this so that it kind of stays, keeps its fold, and air can circulate all the way around, outside, inside, everything. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside in that position, and I'm going to bring these pieces in, and these are for the two inside cardstock pieces. And I'm going to glue those down, and I'm going to speed this part up, but it's going to be done exactly the way we just did that outside cover. Okay. Okay, and now we need to cover one more piece, which is the spine reinforcement cover. And it's going to just go in the center with about 1/4 of an inch of fabric to fold over it in the same way that we did these other pieces. Okay, so the next step is to now glue these pieces for the inside into the outside piece. So we can start with our spine reinforcement piece, and you want to get this glued right into the center so that you have you have room to fold your book cover up around the edges, so that you want to make sure that's right in the center. Okay, right in the center there. Okay, now to glue these pieces on, I choose to use a little bit heavier glue, and so I'm just using some tacky glue. You can use any kind of a good strong wet glue. I just think it needs something a little bit heavier than a glue stick for this piece, to glue these heavier items in. So you want to put it just to the inside. Don't go all the way to the edge. That way you won't have glue seeping out around the edges too much. In fact, we really don't want any glue seeping out around the edge. So we'll be wiping up any that does seep out. Okay, so we just put it all over around the edges and in the center. Okay, if you get too much, near an edge or something, you can just spread it out. Okay. All right, so we're just going to be placing this right in the middle. Okay, make sure that the edges, top and bottom edges, are lined up. I do want to move this little piece of a thread. Move it. It's kind of showing. Scrape that to the inside so it won't show. Okay, and you've got a minute to move it around and get it where it needs to go if you use the tacky glue, and then you can just press it into place. Okay. Okay. I'm also going to put a couple of little binder clips, top and bottom, just to hold it in place, to keep it there till the glue gets dry. Okay, and just make sure it's all pressed down. We'll be placing something on this to let it dry too, to make sure everything gets stuck down good. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing and put glue on these. I've got a bigger bottle of this. I'm going to get the bigger bottle. And this fits just inside the other color here, right inside the edges. So you'll have about 1/8 of an inch edge around these outside edges. So just center it right in there, just like that. Okay, that looks nice. Press it down good. Might get my brayer back out for that and just press it in. I'll press it on the center too. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to do the other side. Same way. Same thing, just about 1/8 of an inch in, all the way around the outer edges. I see an edge over here that is not sticking, so I'm going to put a little bit more glue there. Okay, and if it does seep out, just wipe it away. Okay, because we don't want any excess sticking out there. Okay. All right, so now we're going to leave it to dry, and I'm just going to set some heavy items. You can use books, or like I've got some containers, you know, products that I can set there, and that kind of helps keep everything in place. All right, especially the corners and the edges. So I'm going to move these around a little bit. And then I've got a couple of small ones I can put in the center to kind of help hold that down. But if you got a heavy book, that's perfect. And just leave it be for a little while. My book is dry. You can see here. And you might have noticed before, I didn't notice it until I had turned off the camera, but I had placed this little reinforcement piece in just a little bit crooked. And so when I closed my book, it was not even like it should have been. So while the glue was still wet, I pulled that piece up and I re-glued it in a much straighter, much straighter position. So now it's perfectly even here where it should be in that spine. When my book dried, it dried a little wonky, as you can see. You see how this is kind of bowing out just a little bit. I did leave it standing up this time. When I made this other one, I did not do that for the final drying. I did leave it underneath the books. And so that's probably the best idea. Make sure that once you glue all of your fabrics down and you glue everything together, make sure that you do fold along these lines again, just like we had been doing, just to make sure that that crease is there. And if the fabric's going to move any, that's when you want it to move, to make sure that it holds well. And then just lay it back flat underneath your heavy items to dry. And it may turn out better. This one did get a little wonky, and a few minutes ago I warmed it up with my heat tool and put the heavy book that I had back on top of it again, and it did help to flatten it out a little bit more. It's not quite as wavy as it was, so if I were to do that and leave it longer, it would probably come out just fine. But and it's fine like it is. I mean, I don't mind it being wonky a little bit. It's a handmade book, so once you get your signatures and all of the additions in place, you're not going to see any of that anyway. You're going to be wrapping it up, and it's going to be full and holding together as a book. It's going to be being tied together, you know, like this, and so you're not going to have any issues with wonkiness. But I just wanted to mention that it is paper in there, and so, you know, when paper gets wet, it's going to warp a little bit. So that being said, don't stress over it if your book gets a little bit warped. Okay, so now the next step that we're going to do is to sew in the signatures here. Okay, what you need to do is cut another piece of your printer paper in the same size as the chipboard that you cut for this reinforcement piece, and just cut another one of those. Okay, then what we're going to do is get our glasses on. Okay, then what we're going to do is find the center, excuse me, of that piece. So if you don't have a centering ruler, and you're not real great with a ruler like me, you can fold this piece in half to find the center, and, you know, just make a little crease right down the middle, and that'll tell you where your center is. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and fold my little pattern piece here. We get a crease in the middle. Okay, so now we know where center is, okay? And I'm going to mark that with my pencil, if I can find my pencil. Here it is. Okay, so this is the center. All right, and if I put this ruler back on it, or any ruler, from that center line, you want to go 1/8 inch over on either side. So I'm going to make a mark that's 1/8 of an inch over on this side, and a mark that's 1/8 of an inch over on this side. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing on this end. We'll mark the center. And I'm just using any old 1/8 inch mark here. It's not, since I'm not really measuring the piece, I'm just measuring the 1/8 of an inch. So we got one there and one here. Okay, so then all we're going to do is draw a line on those little 1/8 inch marks. We don't have to worry about the center anymore right now. We're just going to mark those lines, those little 1/8 inch lines. Okay. Whoops, move the ruler. Try that again. Okay. So now we have those two 1/8 of an inch marks. Okay. Now we'll find the center this way by folding it the other direction. Okay. And that center area right there where the center long fold and the center short fold meet, that's going to be your middle right there. So we're going to be poking a hole in our cover in that middle area. Okay. All right, and then we're going to this is going to be kind of laid like this. So we're going to decide how far in do we want to come on either side. Actually, you don't want to mark that in the center. I'm sorry. You want to mark, let's just go ahead and draw our center line here. Okay, that's our center line. You want to mark where these lines intersect because we're going to sew in two signatures. Okay, so there's two marks for the center of both signatures. And then we're going to come in over here about, let's say, maybe 5/8 of an inch or 1/2 inch. Yeah, let's do about a 1/2 inch. Okay, so that's 1/2 inch mark here, 1/2 inch mark here. Let me move it out of my book now. Okay, so then we're going to draw this line. Now we're going to go over here and mark a 1/2 inch from this end, right here, and right here, and draw a line. Still don't feel like that one is straight. It looks a little crooked. That could be this line throwing me off. Here, let me see. I just want to measure it again. That one is definitely a 1/2 inch. This one is, yeah, it's a tiny bit off. We'll just straighten it up a tiny bit. Okay, so now where these lines intersect, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make a little circle, a little dot. That's where our hole is going to be, where each one of these lines intersect. Okay, so your little template should look just like this. Okay, and that's going to be where we punch holes in our cover. Okay, so now you're going to take your little clips, whatever you're using here. Don't let it come down in your way here. You want to be able to see those marks. So I'm just going to fold the bottom piece down. And I'm going to put it on this end. Oops, fold that piece down. Okay, so that's where our holes are going to be punched. And so I need to get a little mat. There we go. Get my little mat to put underneath here because I'm going to be poking through. And get my pokey tool. and just poke the holes right where they're marked. So you should see the holes have come out on the outside, and it's hard to see on your darker fabric, so we're gonna make a little correction for that. Move this out of the way. Okay, you'll be able to see them when you're up close. Let's see, I'm gonna make these a little bit bigger. I'm gonna push the pokey tool on through just a little bit because only the point went through before. So I'm gonna just push these on through, and then we'll be able to see it better, and then we can also mark it. Hold on to your hold on to the spine area so that it doesn't bend on you. Just hang on to it and gently push your tool through there. Okay, and the last one. There we go. Okay, so now we can take this off. Set your template aside. You can see the holes on this side. Okay, and on the back you can see them. It's a little bit more difficult, but if you take a charcoal pencil, don't do a waxy one, but do one that's like chalky, okay? Because it'll wipe off. If you need to later, it'll wipe off. So I'm just making a mark there so that these are brighter. Kind of gives it a little bit of a white color there, and it'll wipe right off later if you still see it at all. You may not even still see it, but this way you can see where the holes are, here, here, and here. All right. So now we have the cover ready. So now we need to take our checkbook register or our paper pages, whatever you're creating with. I'm going to take the staples out and remove this cover. And the little cover will be a perfect little piece to use like in a junk journal or whatever, because it's got the little calendar grid and everything on it, so it's kind of fun to keep it. It's not real stiff. It's just a tiny bit heavier than these pages, but I'm just taking it out because I just want to use the pages in mine. Okay. So I'm just kind of pressing down against these, where these little holes are, because we're not going to use these holes, but you're not really going to see them either, so I'm just kind of pressing them down to kind of close them up a little bit. Okay. We're going to count out 4 sheets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's 1 signature. And this should be 4 sheets also. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that's our other signature. Okay, so now we need to punch holes in the signature. We want them to match the holes that we made in our little template here. Okay, so I'm just taking a scrap piece of cardstock, just a little piece, and it's about the same. I think it's the same length. It's the same length as the pages themselves. There we go. Yes. Cut a little piece of scrap that's the same length or height as your book, and then just fold that in half. And it doesn't matter about the width, you just want to make sure you give yourself enough room to work with. This one is about 2 1/8 inches wide, so 2 inch by 6 inch will be fine. Okay, and then you just want to fold that in half, and then take your little template that you made and lay the fold inside, on top of your little template. Now you want to get it centered in there because your reinforcement piece is a little bit longer than your piece here. So get it centered, so you're going to have a little bit on the edge on that reinforcement piece each end, and then just take your pencil and mark where that hole is. Okay. All right. And then you can open up your template. You can see the marks, and I'm just going to take a book. This is just an old paperback that I've been tearing pages out of, and I just use it for poking a lot of times. So take your first signature. Well, now I have to fold it this way so I can see the marks. Yep, fold your little template back the other way. And then you can measure, put it right in end to end, because it should fit just the same size. You don't really have to clip this in. You can if you want to, but it's so few pages it really won't matter too much, because they won't slip and slide around on you too much. And then just, I start with the center and poke through, and then I do each end, just like that. And using a book, you can use a phone book or whatever, it just gives the pokey tool someplace to go. Okay, there we go. So that signature is now punched. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing with this one. Make sure all the pages are stacked properly, and then set this in directly in the center. Okay, press it in a little and then poke. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, now we have our second signature ready to go. Okay, now you want to take your needle. I tried to find one with a large enough eye to get your thread in. You can use, this is just some little thin baker's twine. You can also use embroidery floss or crochet thread, or what's really good too to use is a thicker upholstery thread. A thicker upholstery thread that's heavy duty. It won't snap, won't break on you. But just thread your needle. Actually, let's measure out how much we need first. Okay, I'm going to do three lengths of the book. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then just snip that and see if we can thread this needle pretty easily. Yeah, one layer. There's another little trick if you've never done this before. Sometimes you can take your thread and fold it over the head of the needle, the eye of the needle, and hold it tight and slide it out, and then you've got a fold there, and sometimes that folded thread will push right up through the eye, if you can grab it. If you can grab it all. There we go. Kind of ratted it up a little on the end, but that's okay. We're not going to use the whole piece anyway. We just need to have enough to work with. Okay. So I'm going to start in the center. Take the first signature. So the first signature will be sewn along this first line of holes. Okay, right here. Okay. So I'm going to take the first one, and I'm starting in the middle on the inside. When I finish, the strings will be tied on the inside. Okay, if you want your strings to be on the outside, then you need to start with your needle going through on the outside of your book. But I'm going to tie mine to the inside. Okay, and then when you get to here, just hang on to the tail of the string. Okay, and then you want to go to either end but make sure you stay in the same row of holes. Now, you know what? In this case, I do want to, here, I'm going to take the thread out and do this. In this case, lay your signature on your cover and go ahead and, let's see, let's open it up. Get it in place over the holes, and then go ahead and clip the pages to the cover on each side. Yeah. And that way you won't have any issue with it moving, because it will move around, makes it a little bit more difficult. This makes it a whole lot easier to sew in. So you can see that the signature is laying here right next to the holes that it's going to be, kind of like right over the holes that it's going to be sewn into. Okay, now we're going to start in the middle. And pull it through and hold on to the tail. Okay, and then go to either end and push it through. Oops, I got a little knot there. We go. Okay, and then you want to go all the way to the other end, to this hole. Okay, make sure you're always going through the holes you punch. Don't make new holes. Okay, and now we're going to go back into the middle hole that we started with and make your needle come up on the other side of the straight thread going down the middle, because we're going to tie both ends together, and we want to tie them over the middle of this thread, the long thread. Okay, so now we can take the needle off. Just pull everything snug. Make sure these stitches are nice and flat and snug. Okay, and then we're going to tie double knot, right over left and left over right. Okay, like a square knot, and then snip the threads. Okay, so there's one signature sewn in. Okay, all right, we're going to do the same thing on this one. Make sure this is stacked up well here. I'm going to put the holes of the signature over the holes in the cover. And then clip it in. Okay. Measure out another piece of thread. That's 3 lengths of the book. 1, 2, 3. Thread your needle again. Kind of challenging with this baker's twine sometimes. Okay, I think we're okay. There we go. Got it. I'm starting in the center again. It comes out the back hole on the cover, and I'm going to hold the tail of the thread here. I'm going to go down through this one. Here. All the way down to the one on the other end. Oops, I'm going to get proper place there. There we go. and then back through the center again, and on the bringing it up on the other side of the long thread, the long stitch. And you try not to punch into your previous thread you had there, because it'll split it up and it won't hold your book tight. There we go. All right. Get this loose. All right. Now pull it snug. Check your stitches. Make sure they're nice and flat, straight. Okay, and then tie your square knot over your, actually I want to do this. Make sure it's over that middle thread, yes. Okay, so we're going to tie it right over left, left over right. Okay, there we go. So now we've got both of the signatures sewn in. It's really simple, guys, really simple. If you've never done it before, you'll be amazed at how easy that is to do. So, there's one and there's two. Now, actually, before I sewed those in, I should have done this step, and I'm going to tell you right now. And it's not really important because you're going to cover all these pages, but this is upside down now because I want this to be the front of my book. I like the colors and the patterning on the front better than I do on the back. I mean, I love this, but it's just darker and it's got some browns, and I prefer to keep that one to the back side, and I like the brightness of the front. So if it bothers you that something like this is going to be upside down, then, you know, by all means, make sure you check which side of your book you want to be front and back before you stitch them in. But like I said, the truth of it is we're going to be covering all this, so you're not going to see any of this stuff anyway. All right, so there we've got a journal with the pages sewn in. Now, if you want, you can punch a hole and set an eyelet right here in the center of the back and tie in your sari ribbon or whatever you're going to use for your closure. And I actually forgot to do this part. I was going to go ahead and punch a hole here, and you need to do that before you stitch your signatures in, although these are far enough apart that there might be room still to punch a hole and set an eyelet there if you choose to do that. I think I'm not going to do that on this one, but you can do it. But if you do that, do it before you sew your signatures in. You can just punch a hole and set an eyelet there. And that will do it. I mean, the rest is just, you know, decorating it, putting a little charm on the end of your ribbon. I just, like I had shown before, I just tied this piece of ribbon here where I had put the eyelet on the back. I just tied it in place and then strung these little beads on here and tied a couple of knots, you know, and just left it. And this piece just has, is decorated with just a little piece of threads. And that was actually a piece of baker's twine, not this one, but another one. It's a piece of baker's twine that kind of unravels, so it looks a little bit separated now, but it's fun. To me, it's fun. It's because it's just like a little junky art journal anyway, so I really think that's kind of fun. But it just attached a little tag here to the end, so if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. You can decorate it any way you want. And, you know, beads, and then a charm if you want a charm on the end. I put a little kind of a heavy charm on the end because as I wrap it around and then tuck it inside, the weight of the charm kind of helps to keep that in place. It's not necessary, but it's just a fun little addition, and it makes the book kind of fun. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little tutorial, and I hope you'll have so much fun creating your little journal. I'm excited to get started. I do have a little vacation I'm going on with my family in the middle of the month. So our first mixed media morsels pages that we'll do will probably be towards, you know, between the middle and the end of the month. In the meantime, you guys can be working on how you want to cover your little journal and how you want to decorate it and embellish it and get it all ready to go. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. If you didn't buy a kit or haven't planned to buy a kit from my Etsy store that has this particular checkbook register in it, it's fine. You can use one that you have at home or one from the bank. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that the measurements that I used on these patterns are specific to this checkbook register, which is 3 inches. Well, it's almost 3 inches. Sometimes they're, yeah, this one's just a hair under, maybe a 1/16 under 3 inches by 6 inches. So you just want to make sure that whatever you're creating with, as far as the checkbook register goes, or even if you don't have a checkbook register and you just want to cut some papers, that's perfectly fine too. I just like the idea of upcycling, you know, an item, and I think that's a lot of fun. So the sheets you would cut for you know, if you're not going to use a checkbook register, are easily, you can do 6 inches by 6 inches. Okay, 6 by 6 squares folded in half, and you've got a booklet to use.